Do you actually know where you strike the ball on the club face, or are you just guessing? Because in my pursuit of speed, what I was feeling wasn't what the strike data was showing. Today we're going to look at the importance of striking golf. We're also going to look at ways in which you can easily measure strike, and we're also going to look at the pitfalls that can occur if you're trying to gain speed and the impact it can have on strike. So before we get into the meat of the video, if you know your general location that you strike the ball on the club face, pop that down in the comments. And if you don't know your strike location, then pop guessing down there. Because sometimes what we actually feel is our strike against what is real can be two entirely different things altogether. So I know my strike generally tends to favour the toe side of any club that I use, and specifically when we look at driver, we tend to find that my strike naturally tends to favour the high toe side. Now on modern drivers, that's not necessarily a particularly bad place to hit the ball, and we still get decent performance there. However, we should all be striving to hit as close to the centre of our golf clubs as we possibly can. But how can we easily measure our strike? Now there are three main ways that we can do this. So number one is that some launch monitors can actually measure strike. Now my launch monitor can, but it's an additional purchase that I've not been able to justify. So we're not going to touch too much on launch monitors because it's an expensive way to measure strike. So option two is strike tape. Now this is a sticky piece of paper that you put on the club face, and when you hit the ball it actually leaves an imprint mark, and I'll pop a quick picture up here just so as you can see what that looks like. I'll also pop a link down in the description to a well-reviewed product. Now these are normally very good and they do work very well. They have a slight problem if it's damp because the sticky just doesn't quite work, and also you have to understand that you are putting a piece of paper over the front of your golf club, so if you are looking at trying to check spin and launch, then obviously those things can be affected by the foreign object that you've stuck on the face of your golf club. But in general, it's a good way for you to measure strike. So the third option, and my preferred method for measuring strike, is to use athlete's foot spray. Now in the UK we tend to have this version made by Dactarin, and I'm pretty sure in the US that you tend to use the Shoal version, and I'll pop links to those again down in the description for you. So measuring strike with these foot sprays is a really cheap and easy way of doing it, and all we're basically going to do, we're going to give it a quick little shake, we're going to take the top off, we're going to grab hold of our driver face, and all we're going to basically do from there is just give it a little spray. We're now going to leave that for around about 30 seconds. And when we come back, we can see it's dried, and you can now see that the face is really marked with this nice white powder. And then what will happen is every time we hit a shot, it will leave a mark and it will remove some of that powder. And that's really going to give us a real simple way of checking our strike. And if we then find that that obviously wears off and we want to refresh, it's as simple as picking up the can, giving it another spray, and just filling in the gap. And from here we can easily then measure strike without any real issues whatsoever. And once we've finished our practice, all we've got to do, get a little bit of a wet damp cloth, just give that a nice wipe over on the club face, and there you go, nice and simple. That's all cleaned off and ready for use again. So now you've seen the product that I use to monitor my strike, now's a great time to subscribe to the channel. I've created a whole series here about being able to gain speed and distance, and I'll pop a link up there for you. Now these aren't only aimed at people that are trying to do speed training. There's some videos there with simple tips and tricks that could actually gain you distance with very little effort. So make sure you subscribe to the channel, and that way you won't miss any of the content and you won't be losing out on distance off the tee. So fundamentally, once we've got our strike point mapped out and we know where we're hitting the ball on the club face, that gives us a great start point to start improving. And we could do that on your own, or you may want to do some work with your local PGA teaching professional to help try and improve your strike if it's not where it should be. Now, fundamentally, having mapped the strike, that's really important, because as I've said before, quite often the feel of where you're hitting the golf club can be entirely different from where you actually are. So as I've said before, I tend to strike my driver slightly higher on the toe side as a rule, and my driver is actually set up for that strike, and that's something that I think is worth talking about a little bit here. Right, I'm going to pop an image straight up on the screen here, because interestingly, drivers don't actually have a flat face. They have curvature both from heel to toe and also from top to bottom. Now, top to bottom is called roll, and as you can see from this image, that means that your driver actually has varying degrees of loft depending on where you strike it on the face. So the point that a driver is measured for its loft is from the middle. Now, if you're going to hit the ball above the middle, so slightly high on the club face as I do, there's going to be more loft there. And if your natural tendency is to hit the ball slightly below the middle, then you're going to be reducing loft on the driver. And that's something really, really important to understand while we're thinking and working on strike. So for me personally, I have a 9-degree driver, but I have it turned down to 8 degrees because I routinely hit slightly high on the club face, so that actually gives me more loft than the 8 degrees that we say we have. So hopefully that makes sense, that the loft changes on your driver, and depending on where you strike it can actually impact your vertical launch and the flight of your driver. So as you know, if you've been watching some of my other videos in this series, I've been experimenting with making a faster backswing to gain speed, which I've certainly seen benefits from. But one of the things I was a little bit concerned about was how strike was feeling. Now for me, it felt like strike was all over the face. It felt like it was toe, it was heel, it was high, it was low. And I wanted to quantify that to see if what I was feeling was actually what was happening. Now what's really interesting is my strike has actually been really consistent. It's just been really consistently bad. And I'll put an image up on the screen here for you now, and you can see that as I've gradually increased the speed of my backswing to make it faster, my natural slightly high toe strike has actually moved even further to the toe. Now, no laughing or sarky comments about this strike. I'm aware it's absolutely miles away from where it should be, but it's certainly something that's got worse as I've increased the speed of my golf swing, but at least it's very consistent in a single location, which should make it somewhat easier for me to be able to move it back to where I would like it to be. Now again, I can't bang this drum enough about how important it is to actually understand and have the data about where your strike is. Without actually knowing where your strike is, it's really difficult to work out how you can actually change that strike. And I'm a prime example. I felt that strike was all over the club face, and it wasn't. It was really consistent, just not in a really good place. So the problem I have with my strike is currently twofold as far as I see it. One, the strike is just too high on the club face, and two, now with the faster backswing, it's just way too far to the toe for it to be successful. So we've got to look at both of those, but I think for today's video, we're going to focus mainly on trying to reduce the height and bring that strike down on the club face. I think that's the easiest thing to achieve, and we'll look at being able to try and pull that strike more back towards the middle in a future video. So I tend to naturally tee the ball quite high, and that's to really give me the feeling that I've got to hit up on the ball, get an upward angle of attack to get the launch. Now, I tried a few different things in my practice to see if I could drop launch, and the only thing that I found worked was just to tee the ball down a little bit further. Now, I've not teed it down really, really low. I have dropped it just a tiny little bit, and as you'll see from the pictures that I'll just pop up on the screen, you can see that that has significantly dropped my strike closer to the middle. Now the consequence of that is now means that my 8-degree driver, I'm actually hitting significantly closer to the 8 degrees loft that it says it has on it. And what that's caused is that's caused a slightly lower flight and not such great launch characteristics for me. So to combat that, I've now popped my driver back to 9 degrees. So as when I hit it out the middle, I'm getting the 9 degrees of loft that I want. And what I've seen is I've seen that my launch has come back into the window that I would want it. So there's consequences of changing our strike, and we have to be able to work out what those are. But certainly I want to get that strike down closer to the equator and middle of the driver. And if that means I have to put my driver back to 9 degrees, then that's not a problem, because I'm actually generating the correct loft and vertical launch that I need. Now, while I've been concentrating on strike over the last couple of weeks, something really interesting has happened, and that's my speed has absolutely dropped off a cliff. And I'll pop up my last couple of stack sessions onto the screen here while I'm going over this. Now, is this linked to me really focusing on strike? I'm not 100% sure, because like I say, I'm actually really slow in the stack at the moment. Now, this is frustrating, but it's all part of the process. And I have mentioned in previous videos that the one thing that speed training isn't, is it isn't a linear progression. We tend to have these peaks and troughs along the line. So I'm really hoping that going forward, my speed just returns and I can continue on my progress. So in conclusion, it's really obvious that modern drivers are fantastic off of off-center strikes, and my strike patterns show that, as I'm still able to play reasonably decent golf with those. However, strike is king, and it's really, really important that we actually understand where our strike is, so as then we can work on how we can improve that to get it closer to the center of the club face. So don't forget the links down in the description for the products that can help you to find your strike location. And if you know your strike location, then remember to make sure to pop that down in the comments. And if you don't, then just pop guessing down in the comments. Don't forget to hit the like button. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and check out this video that I think you'll enjoy. I'm Graham, and I'll catch you on the course soon.